welcome to a brand new episode of the Five Heart Podcast, brought to you by CoreNation.com, part of the SB Nation Podcast Network. I'm your host, Greg Mahochko, joined nobody. Ghost town around here. If you caught the little video that I did over on the official CoreNation YouTube channel, you'll know that I said that Todd is in the middle of moving, so he is taking himself out of the game, we'll say. And John is prepping for something that I don't know if I'm at liberty to say due to HIPAA, and also I don't want John to come down and kick my ass. But let's just say John's in prep mode. He's okay, but he's in prep mode. So he is taking himself out of the game, and that leaves me. Hello. This obviously will not be a terribly long podcast or video or show, but we'll at least do what we set out to do, which was answer your questions, courtesy of YouTube. And I'll take the heat. Initially, I didn't know that Todd and John were going to be unavailable, so it was the usual Wednesday pre-production meeting. And I said, we try to record tonight. And that's basically when they said, no, we can't. We're unavailable. So I said, okay, I'm going to try something else. Years ago, in fact, when the late, great Brian Toll first brought me into CoreNation to co-host a podcast with him, because we had really gelled well together on another Husker site that is now defunct. We had a write-in mailbag type of podcast called Detasseling the Huskers. It's still there. You can still find it on CoreNation.com. And if nothing else, you got to go back to a different time in Husker athletics, because it was, close to a decade ago. So the Bo Pelini era, 8, 9, occasional 10-win seasons. But more than anything, it's just, I encourage you to find those out on CoreNation.com. Just to hear Brian. Brian is such a great guy, and a fun co-host, and you could always tell what kind of mood he was in. So I put a video out there basically soliciting your questions, and thank you. We got one. Actually, I never checked Facebook. I'm guessing we probably didn't get it. I should do that. But one on YouTube. So we will get to that. Before we do, however, want to at least get you up to date on the most recent happenings in Nebraska athletics, which the most recent is Nebraska women's basketball losing Thursday night, February 17th, on the road at Penn State. Why is that a big deal? Because Penn State's not good at women's basketball. And in our CoreNation Slack chat room, Jill, who is our resident damn near everything, but especially when it comes to women's basketball, said that it is a perennial problem with Coach Williams in the latter half of the year. Now, they lost 83-76 to Penn State. This is coming off of a couple of big wins. So I almost wonder if it was just kind of an emotional letdown. You go back to Monday, Valentine's Day, they hosted and beat number 5 Indiana. Not just beat them, they whooped the shit out of them, 72-55. And a couple days before that, on Saturday at Champaign, they beat the Illini 82-63. So it's unfortunate that they had what might be considered, like a let up game, something like that. They're going to have to get right back at it because this weekend on Sunday, they host Minnesota. They did beat Minnesota on the road back at the beginning of December. But if Jill's theories are accurate, this Nebraska team, as good as they have been, might not be that same team that beat the Lady Gophers a couple months ago. Then they're going to take on Wisconsin on the road, Northwestern at home, and boom, Ash Wednesday, March 2nd, we're into the women's Big Ten tournament. I don't think they'll be playing on Wednesday. I think that they will have carried themselves well enough in the regular season that they will at least get a first round bye, if not possibly, depending on how these last 3 games go, maybe kick off until Friday. So that's what's going on with the women. I'm checking the Facebook now just to see if there are any comments, any questions on there. Again, it's things that I realistically should have done earlier, but we didn't have a comment on the YouTube video until just a couple hours ago, so I wasn't even sure. Nothing on Facebook. That makes my job easier. I wasn't even sure that we'd be having a show this week. It's, again, my fault because I really did put it off till the very end. So my apologies. But we'll do the best we can. Real quick, want to thank our unofficial sponsor for this week's show, and that is Yuengling Lager. This is actually the light lager. So light, the light is bouncing off of it. But hey, look, 99 calories, 4% alcohol by volume, 3.2 grams of carbs. Yuengling, the America's oldest brewery, and by golly, delicious. I do like my beer. Not that that's a problem. I don't have a problem. I'm just saying, I like a beer or two from time to time. Couldn't tell you last time I got drunk. Anyway, let's go to the YouTube channel and let's get an A to the Q that was brought. And I'm only guessing that I'm going to pronounce this right. I'm probably not. I'm going with Lloyd McChristmas. Fantastic reference by Lloyd Christmas from Dumb and Dumber. So Jeff's kiss to you, Lloyd, who says, what team is going to turn it around first, Nebraska or Texas? 2022 and beyond is at least my interpretation of the question. So I had to look at a lot of things to put this answer together. I looked at, of course, last year's records, this year's schedules, and, well, let's do the breakdown before I give the answer. Otherwise, I could say it's this. That's our show. See you later. And try to give you a little bit more of your money's worth. So Nebraska, of course, finished 3-9. Underwhelming, disappointing, however you want to slice that particular apple. Texas, probably equally disappointing for them. They finished 5-7. Didn't do great in conference. They were only 3-6 in the conference. They lost to a rank, or they beat a ranked team, at least the team that was ranked at the end of the season. Raging Cajuns, Louisiana, at the beginning of the year. Then they lost to future SEC foe Arkansas. They won against Rice, but that's not saying much. They won against Texas Tech. Again, Texas Tech is not the Texas Tech of old. They beat TCU at TCU. They went to that Red River shootout and lost to Oklahoma. Again, Nebraska also lost to Oklahoma. And it was comparably scored. If you want to look at those, Nebraska and Oklahoma was a little lower scoring. Texas, Oklahoma, that score, the Sooners winning that 55-48. They lost at home against Oklahoma State. Again, the Cowboys, no slouches. They were a top 15 program. They lost at Baylor, again, a top 20 program. They lost at Iowa State, that team that finished outside of the rankings, but they lost by a wide margin, 30-7. They lost to Kansas in overtime at home. We all remember the videos of that, the tight end catching that overtime score. And, I'm not a Kansas fan, and I don't follow the Big 12 close enough anymore. But it was the first time in a long time since the Kansas Jayhawks had beat Texas. So they lost at West Virginia before finally beating Kansas State. Similar to Nebraska's latter half of the season, or even beyond, where Nebraska finished 0-7, Texas finished 1-6. Their final win, and dare I say, unimpressive win against Kansas State, 22-17. They didn't, blow the barn doors off or anything like that. And then, as certainly Nebraska and many teams do, they had their offseason attrition. We also all know of Casey Thompson, who ended up making his way north to Lincoln. Let's take a quick look now at their schedule for this is why I'm concerned about Texas 2022 and beyond. And I say concerned, not because I care about Texas, because I don't. But Texas fans, I think, should be worried about Texas joining the SEC. As I mentioned, they lost to Arkansas last year. They opened up this season September 3rd against Louisiana Monroe, and then they are facing Alabama. Then they have Texas San Antonio, then Texas Tech, West Virginia, Oklahoma. It's interesting that they get Oklahoma a couple weeks after Nebraska faces Oklahoma. Be interesting to see what kind of shape the Sooners are in after Nebraska is done with them. And I'm not, I'm only as hopeful and Kool-Aid drinking as the next Big Red fan. But you certainly hope that with the pieces that have been put in place in Lincoln, be it, staff or athletes, that Nebraska will have a better showing, a better chance. So Texas, Oklahoma, of course, that one will be on neutral soil, neutral ground. Then they face Iowa State. Then it's Oklahoma State. I got to scroll down a little bit. Kansas State, TCU, Kansas, and then rounding things out against Baylor at the end of November. Based on what we saw from Texas from a year ago, I'm not entirely sure how many of these games are going to be wins. They lost to Baylor, lost to Kansas, beat Kansas State, but lost to Oklahoma State and Iowa State, beat TCU, but losses to West Virginia and Oklahoma. I don't think they're going to have a chance against Alabama. And that's not me being an Alabama fan. You all know my loyalties and my thoughts there. I think Texas and Nebraska are similar in a lot of ways, that there are games that look winnable on paper for both programs. It's just what team, a little schizophrenic, what team is going to come out of the gate and step onto the field day to day. So let's take a look at Nebraska's schedule. We know pretty well. Obviously, we've got all of our calendars marked for August 27th, Nebraska Northwestern in Ireland. I think I'm partially Irish. I could probably say Ireland. Maybe not. Maybe this is all the Irish I get. I don't know. That's not, that's for fun. Anyway, I think Nebraska beats Northwestern. North Dakota, I think Nebraska beats them. It's North Dakota. It's not North Dakota State. Those are two different entities completely. Then Georgia Southern, and then Oklahoma. So right away, you get the sense that Nebraska needs to come out of the gates hot. They have the conference game. It is, assuming nothing changes, between now and the end of August, that one will be across the pond. I still don't know. I said a few weeks ago that there's no way that game doesn't get played in Ireland because of money. Yeah, I'm waiting for I'm waiting for the announcement to come that's being changed. It probably won't be. I'm waiting for that. Anyway, after Oklahoma, it's Indiana and Rutgers, Purdue, Illinois. We start getting more into the Big Ten West, Minnesota, Michigan in there, Wisconsin, and of course, finishing up on Black Friday against Iowa. I think we talked about this last week, that, and not to say that in any capacity am I happy with moral victories or with close losses. I'm not. In fact, sometimes they piss me off as much, if not more, than a one-sided affair, even with Nebraska losing, because if the game gets out of hand, and I've never done this, I've been a glutton for punishment as long as I've been a Husker fan. But if the game gets out of hand, you think somebody somewhere's like, all right, I'm going to go, mow the yard, clean the house, start the grill, whatever. I'm going to turn off the game and occupy my Saturday afternoon with something else. But when the game's close, you got to stick it out because you just don't know, right? So I think that, and again, I think, but I'm also hopeful, and maybe the hope is the heart is overtaking the brain a little bit, but I'm hopeful that everything is starting to be in place. So we don't have as many world beaters on the schedule this year. As much as I hate to give them any unnecessary credit, and as close as we've played them recently, we don't have Ohio State on here. I mean, we've got Michigan, and Michigan certainly, they're a college football playoff team last year. So, last month, realistically, last season anyway. But that's a team that Nebraska took right to the end, and I'm still pissed off about that, lack of call on a loss of forward momentum that Michigan ended up punching the ball free from Adrian Martinez and picking it up and going the other way. Still mad about that because I think what pisses me off about that is any other time it is the quarterback with the ball in the middle of a pile, the refs blow the whistle, and the pile was not moving forward. Anyway, tormented by the things we can't change. Heard that on a different podcast this week. The guy who was being interviewed, he said, I'm tormented by the past because I can't alter it. I can't change anything of it. So anyway, that's Nebraska football the last 20 years, it seems. We've also talked about this, and I think I asked Todd point blank. And by the way, Todd, it's not fair. He's getting a day off. He's already said, I'm not drinking in February. I'm not yelling about Scott Frost coaching. And we already gave him shit for it being the shortest month. So, Todd, I know you're listening to this or watching it on YouTube. You owe us a Be Nice to Scott Frost Day in March. I'll say it right now. But I asked him, I said, if Nebraska comes out, has a winning record, makes a bowl game, things like that, where are you at on Frost? Do you look at it as actual improvement, or do you look at it as having a better season against weaker competition? I don't know if I even phrased it that well when I asked the question, and I don't know if Todd ever gave me a real answer. So again, thanks, Todd. But I think if you're asking me, Lloyd McChristmas, if you're asking me who's going to have the better season in 2022, I'm going to say Nebraska. And if you're asking me who's going to have who's going to be more successful in, beyond 2022, I'm going to say Nebraska, because I feel like the 2021 season was the pivot year where we're right there. We lost 9 games. All but one of them were by one score or less. So I feel like while we might have had more wins in prior years, even under Scott Frost, some of the losses were still kind of embarrassing and nasty. And so I feel like just maybe starting to turn things, it's trying to think. It's like a ship in the ocean. And this is from a guy who's never been on a ship in the ocean, but those ships don't turn on a dime. Like they just don't, do a hairpin turn and get going the other way like that. It is a process to move that massive vessel to go the opposite way. And I feel like, to keep my, not naval, but to keep my oceanic, my sea analogy going, I feel like Nebraska has been in the maelstrom, and they have been slowly trying to turn out of the whirlpool to find sunlight. And I do feel, despite the 3-9 record, I feel better about those losses than I have in some of the losses combined, because we were in the games, we weren't blown out. I'm not trying to make excuses and say, oh, if the ball goes this way, or if we get this call, things like that. I'm not trying to do that presently. I probably did it before. I may do it again, but at the moment, I'm not. All I'm saying is we're shifting as a program. I think it's shifting away from the tsunami and trying to find that daylight on the other side. If the Huskers put together a winning record, which I do, again, on paper, we always think that they should, right? But if they put together the winning record, then I really do like, how they'll be able to carry that momentum moving forward. They're bringing in some top talent. They have made some changes on the offensive side of the coaching staff. We haven't seen any of this. We haven't seen any progress, any incremental improvement, as my buddy Hoss Reuter would like to say, because it all happened in the offseason. So we'll have to watch closely during spring, or at least as close as we can. And then summer and fall and from August 27th on, we'll have to watch closely and make sure that the improvements there, that the pieces that have been brought to Lincoln are in fact the right pieces. But I do think that if they have the winning record, if they go to a bowl game, then the narrative starts to shift. And I like that long-term more than I like Texas eventually ending up in the SEC, where Alabama's going to beat on them, Georgia's going to beat on them. Depending on what Ole Miss looks like, or Florida or Tennessee on the way up, or even Kentucky. I don't often praise the SEC and don't take this even as praise, but Texas is going from being a big fish in what has been a really unattractive pond to being a medium-sized fish in a much bigger body of water. They're going to be middle of the road in the conference, I think. I don't think, even with the fertile recruiting grounds that Texas has, and that's what we still hear about all these years later after leaving the Big 12, as well. We lost the ability to recruit in Texas because nobody wants to send their kids to Nebraska to watch them play on TV, and Iowa, Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, any of those places, Minnesota, they want to be able to, see them at Austin or Baylor or, Lubbock, wherever in state, be much closer travel for them, and whatever. But Alabama, Georgia, some of these schools, LSU, they're still going to pick the best kids from across the country, no matter what state they're from. And so I just don't see long-term Texas that move to the SEC. And same for Oklahoma, I'll be honest with you. I just don't see those moves to the SEC good for the football programs. Now it might be good for the athletic departments overall. And, similarly to Nebraska moving to the Big Ten, good for the pocketbook. I just don't see it being good competitively on the football field for either Texas or Oklahoma. It hasn't been great for Nebraska. Certainly. We know that. We know the last 10 years have, they started okay with making it to a Big Ten championship game just to get our asses handed to us. And it's been in a slow decline ever since. And if you look at 2011 to 2021, I think we can call it a slow decline. Some people would say it's been a nosedive. I'm not one of those. I think it's been in a slow decline. I do think we're leveling out, and I do think that we're going to start picking up altitude again. See, I've worked in a sea reference. Now we're working in air. I don't know what else I could do. I don't know what else I can do, but that's my thoughts. Hopefully this one-man show didn't go too long for you all. I appreciate those of you who stuck around. Next time, if we have to do this, I'll try to give you more than 24 hours notice. Drop your questions in a comment so that we can hopefully get more questions. But Lloyd McChristmas, appreciate the question that you presented me. Hopefully you all enjoyed the show. Next week, Todd and John should both be back. Todd's going to have a new name. He's no longer, as always, Todd. We'll have to find something new for him. So for all of my co-hosts who couldn't be here tonight, and for all of Core Nation, who I honestly, when I decided to record this at almost 10 o'clock at night, I figure I'm not going to bother anybody. We wish you all just a tremendous week. If you're going through some winter storms like I'm going through right now here in Southern Illinois, be safe out there. Stay healthy. We'll see you next week on the 5 Heart Podcast, where we remind you this week and every week that 5 Heart is all the heart you need. And since John's not here, I get to say, go Big Red.